My name is Avery Sinclair, and I am 29 years old. And the last thing I remember thinking before everything went wrong was that I should have left 5 minutes earlier. It was a Wednesday morning in January, the kind of January morning Minneapolis specializes in. Bright and deceiving, the sun out, the sky that particular blue you only get when the temperature is still in the single digits and the light has nothing warm to carry. I was on I-35 southbound, 4 miles from my exit, running about 3 minutes behind schedule for a 9 o'clock call. Not stressed about it, just noting it. I was thinking about whether I'd actually started my coffee maker or only thought about starting it, the way your brain does when it has nothing harder to chew on. I was thinking about the exit ramp, and whether the left lane would be clearer at this hour, and whether the road surface looked the way it looked or the way it actually was, which are two different things in Minnesota in January, and the difference between them matters a great deal. A semi-truck coming up behind me hit black ice somewhere around the quarter-mile marker and jackknifed. I don't remember the impact. I've been told this is common, that the brain makes a judgment call about what it can metabolize in real time and quietly removes itself from the moments it decides you can't handle. What I remember is a sound that didn't register as a crash, not the way a crash sounds in movies, but something lower and more total, like a pressure change, like the world briefly had a different density. And then there was nothing. And then there were voices above me that had the specific quality of voices trying to be calm and urgent at the same time. A combination that has no everyday use, one you only encounter on the wrong side of something. I was airlifted to HCMC. Hennepin County Medical Center has a trauma unit that knows what it's doing with winter highway accidents, which is a fact about a place you only discover when you need it. The semi had clipped my driver's side door with enough force to send my car into a concrete barrier at a speed nobody was able to be precise about, because the impact sensors got scrambled and the witnesses gave different numbers. What the imaging showed clearly enough: 2 broken ribs on the left side, a collapsed lung, and internal bleeding in my abdomen that required surgery to find and stop. The surgery took just under 4 hours. The hospital called my emergency contacts within the first hour. My mother picked up on the second ring. I know all of this the way I know most of what happened in those first 36 hours. Not because I was conscious for it, but because a surgical nurse named Vivienne, who had the specific gift of knowing exactly which truths a person needed and exactly how to deliver them, sat down at the corner of my bed on the third day and told me carefully, watching my face the whole time, pausing when she needed to. My parents do a winter trip every January, have for 15 years. The same golf resort outside Scottsdale, Arizona, where my father plays with his college friends and my mother reads by the pool, and they both come back tanned and relaxed and full of stories about the weather. I've never minded it. I've asked about it, looked at their photos, been genuinely glad they had something they looked forward to every year. It's a good trip. They love it. My mother, when she answered the hospital's call from Scottsdale, said she couldn't speak long. They were in the middle of something. It was my father's tournament week. Could the hospital call back when they knew more? The attending physician, a man named Dr. Castellano, who has clearly spent years learning how to deliver information that people do not want to receive, called my parents himself 45 minutes later. He did not soften it. He told them I was in emergency surgery, that the next several hours were critical, that a decision about when to travel was something they needed to make now rather than later. My father took that second call. He told Dr. Castellano they would book the first available flight once I was out of the woods. Those words, exactly. Vivian showed me the note in my chart. Family states they will arrange travel once patient is out of the woods. Out of the woods. I turned that phrase over for a long time after I first heard it. Not out of anger, exactly, though there was that too. But because of how much it revealed about what they understood themselves to be doing. They weren't saying no. They were saying not yet. They were waiting for the situation to develop into something with better odds before they committed their presence to it. Like they were trying to minimize their exposure to a thing that hadn't declared itself finished. While my father was telling a doctor to call back when the outcome looked more certain, my best friend Chloe was already in her car. Chloe and I have been friends since the second semester of our sophomore year at the University of Minnesota, when we were put in the same 4-person group for an introductory communications class and discovered independently, within the first week, that we were both the type of people who do their section of a project immediately and then wait impatiently for everyone else. We've lived 15 minutes apart in this city for 4 years. She is the person I call when something is actually wrong, not because I don't have other people, but because of all of them. She answers fastest and asks questions second. I hadn't called her. I was unconscious on a highway and my phone was destroyed. But I had set up an emergency contact app the previous winter after a bad fall on the ice outside my building, one of those apps that sends an automated alert to a list of people when it detects an anomaly it can't explain, a sudden stop, a lack of movement, a location that stops updating. I'd set it up, tested it once, and mostly forgotten about it. When the paramedics found my phone in the passenger footwell, crushed on one side but still technically on, it had already sent the alert to the 3 people on my list. Chloe was at the hospital before I was out of surgery. She told me later that she'd sat in the surgical floor, waiting room for 4 hours without any confirmation of whether I was alive. She'd bought a bag of gummy bears from the vending machine and eaten every single one of them, not because she wanted gummy bears, but because she needed something to do with her hands. She hadn't called my parents because she didn't have their number and hadn't thought to look for it. She just stayed. 4 hours in a plastic chair not knowing, and she stayed. I woke up fully for the first time on the second day. The room was too bright and too quiet and had the specific smell that all hospital rooms have, the one you recognize before you remember where you are. My left side felt wrong in a way that took me a moment to locate, like the architecture of my ribs had been rearranged into something close to the original but not quite right. There was a tube doing something I didn't have the energy to think about. Chloe was asleep in the chair beside my bed with her coat still on and one boot half unlaced, her chin tipped toward her shoulder. I didn't wake her. I watched the ceiling for a while and listened to the machines. I tried to reconstruct the morning. I got as far as the highway and then left it there. When Vivienne came in for her check, I asked her to let me ask something before Chloe woke up. "Did my parents come?" I asked. Vivienne took a breath that wasn't quite audible, but that told me everything before she said a single word. The kind of breath someone takes when they've already decided to tell you the truth and are just choosing the shape of it. They hadn't come. They'd called twice. The first call, the evening of the accident, lasted 15 minutes, a general update call with whoever was staffing the nurse's station, asking for a status report. The second call the next morning, asking whether I was awake yet and what the prognosis looked like. Neither call had included anything about a flight. The second one had ended, according to the note in my chart, with my mother saying keep us updated and a phone number that, when Dr. Castellano tried it later that afternoon, rang through to voicemail. My parents called twice in 2 days to find out if I was still alive. The way you'd call a repair shop about a car. I lay in that room for 4 more days after that, healing slowly, learning what my body was going to demand of me over the coming weeks, and being taken care of by people whose job it was to take care of strangers, but who showed up for the work with a consistency that started to feel like something more than professional obligation. Vivienne brought me a crossword puzzle book on her 3rd day covering my floor because she said I had the eyes of someone who needed something to do and was going to start making trouble if she didn't give me an outlet. Dr. Castellano came by each morning for longer than my chart probably required, the kind of extended check-in that wasn't about medicine. He'd stand at the end of my bed and ask how I was sleeping, and whether the pain management was working, and then he'd stay for another 4 minutes talking about nothing in particular, and I understood that what he was really doing was filling the space that my emergency contacts were supposed to be in. My brother Tyler showed up on the 3rd day. He's 24, finishing a graduate program at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, 5 hours away by car. He drives a 2014 Civic that makes a noise on cold mornings that I've told him twice to get checked. He had a major paper due that week and midterms the following week and not a lot of money for gas. He walked into my room looking exactly like someone who had driven 5 hours in under 5 hours, coat still on, a plastic bag from a gas station in one hand with a breakfast burrito. He'd picked up 2 blocks from the hospital because he said accurately that hospital food tasted like the specific absence of all food that has ever existed. The first thing he said when he saw me was, "You look terrible," which is what he says when he's scared and doesn't know how else to be in the room with it. He stayed for 2 days. He slept in the other chair. He argued with me about what to watch on the wall-mounted television with the badly calibrated remote and snuck a second contraband breakfast burrito on his second morning because he said it had worked once and there was no reason to experiment. At some point during the second day, while Chloe had gone home to shower and get a change of clothes, I asked him what he knew. He was quiet for a moment in the particular way he gets quiet when he's deciding how much of the truth is useful. He told me he'd called our parents, the night of the accident, the same night the hospital called. He'd pushed for them to come. He'd told them he was driving up and that they should fly in. He said our mother had been quiet for a second, and then said flights were expensive on short notice, and I was in good hands, and they'd see me when they got back. "When is that?" I asked. He looked at his hands. "Sunday," he said. He stopped. "Except what?" "They extended it 3 more days, since things were stable." The room was very quiet for a while after that. They had extended the trip. Because the worst was over, they had added 3 more days to the back end of a vacation, during which their daughter had been in a trauma center with a surgical drain in her abdomen. The math of that, the specific calculation it represented, was something I felt land in my chest in a place where it didn't move again for a very long time. Tyler also told me something else, something I hadn't known. He'd heard our father say something in the background of that first phone call, low, half to himself, probably not meant for Tyler to catch. He'd said, "She's young, she's healthy, she'll be fine." Not as a wish, as a justification. She's young, she's healthy, she'll be fine. Meaning, the outcome is sufficiently probable that our presence isn't load-bearing. Meaning, we've run the numbers and they come out okay, so we don't have to be there for the running of them. I didn't say much when Tyler told me that, I just sat with it. Chloe drove me to her apartment when I was discharged on a Friday. She'd already set up the pull-out couch with her good sheets and a reading lamp positioned exactly right and a stack of things she'd thought to get. The specific brand of sparkling water I drink too much of, a novel she'd been meaning to lend me for months. A new heating pad still in the box from Target that she'd placed on the cushion like a gift. I didn't ask her to do any of it. She just thought about what I would need and acquired it. My parents flew home that Sunday. Tyler texted me when he dropped them at their house on the way back through Minneapolis. I watched their names light up on my screen that Sunday evening and put my phone face down on Chloe's couch cushion. They called again Monday morning, same. I had spent part of the days at Chloe's, the hours when she was at work and I was managing on my own, propped up with the heating pad, moving carefully between the couch and the kitchen and the bathroom, in the measured way you move when your body is reminding you not to push, doing small, quiet things. I removed my parents from the approved visitor list on my apartment building's digital access system. It's an app the building uses. Residents add people who can be let up without the front desk calling first. I'd added my parents 3 years ago when I moved in, automatically, the way you add parents to things without thinking about it. I opened the app on a Tuesday afternoon, while some show played on the television that I wasn't watching, and I removed them. I also removed them from the family plan on my streaming subscription. I opened my emergency contact app and updated the list. I didn't do any of it dramatically. I wasn't crying. I wasn't listening to a meaningful song. I was just sitting with a heating pad against my left side, doing administrative tasks that had quietly stopped reflecting reality. The same way you'd update a wrong address on a form, or cancel a subscription to a service you've been meaning to cancel for a while, because you've realized you're paying for something you're not using. They drove to my apartment building on Tuesday. The attendant at the front desk who works days has known my name since I moved in and always asks about my work. He looked my parents up in the system, found nothing under their names, called up to my unit on the intercom. I didn't answer. He told them, the way someone who is good at that job tells people difficult things, that he couldn't verify them as approved visitors, and that I wasn't responding. My mother called my cell from the lobby. I watched it ring. They stood outside my building for 20 minutes. Tyler told me this later. Because our mother had called him 3 times during those 20 minutes, and he'd had to tell her each time that he didn't have any information to give her. He called me a week later, when I was back in my own apartment, recovering more slowly than I wanted to, but more steadily than I'd expected. He told me our mother had cried, not briefly, but the sustained kind that surprises you when you see it in a parent. The kind that makes you understand that they are capable of being undone by things, just perhaps not the same things you would choose. He said our father had sat very still while she cried and then said plainly, "I don't understand what she wants from us." Tyler hadn't answered him. He told me he understood exactly what the answer was, but that it was too late for the answer to be useful, and he was trying to be honest without being cruel. Tyler and I still talk. We talked before all of this, through the ordinary rhythms of siblings who like each other and live in different cities, and we talk now, differently, with a weight behind it that wasn't there before. He drove 5 hours with midterms coming. He ate gas station food in a hospital chair for 2 days, because I was his sister and the chair was where he needed to be. Whatever our parents are or aren't, he made a different calculation, and I don't hold him responsible for theirs. He mentioned recently, the same offhand way he mentions things he's thought about more than he's letting on, that he's looking into transfer options for his final year of grad school. Programs closer to Minneapolis. He moved past it quickly the way he does. I let him, the way I do. But I thought about it for the rest of that day. My aunt, my mother's older sister, who I've been close to my whole life and who I haven't extended any of this to, because she isn't my parents and understands the difference, reached out gently a few weeks after everything settled. She said my mother keeps asking what she did wrong. I didn't respond to that through my aunt, because there's a version of that question that deserves an answer and a version that doesn't. And my mother's version is the kind being asked by someone who already had the answer, was given the answer by Dr. Castellano on a phone from Scottsdale, and decided to wait for better information before acting on it. Vivienne left a card in the mail about a month after I was discharged. The return address was the hospital's general address, and the card had a short note inside. "You were one of the good ones to take care of. Take care of yourself the same way." I have it on my refrigerator, held up by a magnet I bought at the airport 2 years ago. It's the first thing I see every morning when I go to make coffee. Dr. Castellano's office called to schedule my 3-month follow-up, and the scheduler mentioned that he'd specifically asked to keep my follow-ups on his personal calendar rather than routing them to the general rotation. I don't know exactly what to do with that except feel it. Chloe and I have lunch every Wednesday now. We did it before, inconsistently, slotting it in when schedules allowed. Now it's on both our calendars as a standing block, and neither of us has moved it once since January. I've thought about what I'd say to my parents if they asked me directly what went wrong. I've thought about it enough that I've stopped needing to think about it, which is how I know I've arrived somewhere stable. They would have come to my funeral. I genuinely believe that. They would have been at the front of a room in dark clothes, and people would have said kind things to them, and they would have grieved sincerely, in the way you grieve something you didn't protect while it was in front of you. That grief would have been real. But I needed someone to be in the car before the story had an ending. I needed someone to book a flight before the prognosis came back with good odds. That's the specific thing. The willingness to show up before you know how it turns out. That's what separates love from the accounting of love. And I spent 29 years giving my parents the benefit of the doubt on that distinction without looking at it directly. A cardiac event on a highway, and 4 hours of surgery, and a hospital room where I woke up to find a friend asleep in a chair, and no missed calls from the people whose number I'd put on every emergency form I'd ever filled out. That has a way of making the distinction visible. I canceled something I'd been enrolled in for 29 years, not because I was angry, because I was accurate. And I've been building something else in its place, slower, with more attention than I used to give to the project of it, with the people who were already in the waiting room before anyone knew I was going to be okay. Those people, the ones who showed up when showing up cost them something, when they didn't yet know the ending. Those are the people I'm choosing now. Those are the ones I'm keeping. If any part of this reached you, if you've ever quietly stepped back from someone who was supposed to show up and made a different calculation, I want you to subscribe, because there are more stories here, and I'd like you to be around for the ones that are still coming.